My mop slapped against the station's linoleum floor at 3 a.m, each wet stroke sending needles through my skull. Last night's whiskey had turned to poison in my veins, and every throb of my pulse felt like a hammer hitting a dented nail. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, too bright, too harsh, making my eyes water. The TV station felt like a tomb at this hour. Dead air, empty hallways, just me and the hum of the equipment that never fully powered down. My reflection haunted the dark monitors of the control room. Gaunt face, 3-day stubble, bloodshot eyes. The ghost of Derek Malin, former journalist. I dragged the mop bucket past Studio C when a flicker of light caught my attention. The monitor for Channel 47 had come to life, a static-filled screen gradually resolving into an image. That wasn't right. Channel 47 had been a graveyard of white noise for months. I leaned the mop against the wall and moved in closer. The image stabilized into a low-quality video feed, complete with tracking errors and color distortion. It had the unsettling, voyeuristic quality of a worn-out VHS tape. A figure appeared on the screen draped in a blood-red robe. Their face was hidden in shadow behind a plague doctor's mask, but their voice, clearly digitally altered, filled the room. Justice is blind. We are not unpunished. The words appeared as text on the screen, letters glitching and warping like a failing hard drive. The scene cut to what looked like someone's living room, filmed with a handheld camera. A man, an actor I assumed, was shown rifling through a woman's purse while she slept on the couch. The camera zoomed in on his face, which had been pixelated just enough to tease the brain without hiding the truth. My stomach didn't just drop, it soured. I knew that face. Tommy Wilkins. 3 years ago, I covered a string of home invasions in West Monroe. I'd been too eager to be the hero who caught him, writing the story through a whiskey haze and missing a detail so glaring it turned a lead pipe cinch into a mistrial. Tommy walked free while my career burned to the ground. It was easier to cast the man on the screen as the architect of my ruin rather than admit that I'd pulled the trigger on my own career. The recreated scene continued, showing Tommy, or someone playing him, stealing jewelry, cash, and then lingering over the sleeping woman's body. Thomas Allen Wilkins, the synthesized voice announced. Found not guilty due to police incompetence and media corruption. My name wasn't mentioned, but I felt the accusation like a physical slap. Then came the twist that made my breath catch in my chest. Tommy lives at 1542 Bayou Drive, apartment 3C. They showed his actual address, his current address. The broadcast ended with a final message. When justice fails, the people must not. The screen then returned to static, then darkness. I laughed nervously. They sounded brittle in the hollow control room, trying to convince myself that this was some kind of film student's art project. Guerrilla art at its worst form. Maybe a twisted prank. Kids these days all want to be the next Banksy, I muttered through gritted teeth, desperate to believe my own lie. But deep in my gut, the reporter I used to be knew better. Guerrilla art didn't have access to sealed court files, or the ability to hijack a television station, even one as dead as Channel 47. I finished my shift in a daze, scrubbing toilets with trembling hands. The hangover had cleared, replaced by something worse. Clarity. Back in my trailer after work, the smell of damp rot hit me as I dropped into my sagging couch. I flipped open my laptop, the last relic from my former life, and checked social media. A TikTok trend was picking up the steam. #MoonGang. Short clips showing the same broadcast I'd seen, but edited. Addresses and faces blurred. Comments range from, finally, someone doing something, to, is this real? A chill crawled up my spine. I clicked through Facebook and found similar clips circulating, generating thousands of shares. But these online versions were sanitized. None showed Tommy's address or the most damning accusations. Only I had seen the unedited broadcast. I closed the laptop and rubbed my eyes. Outside, a car door slammed. I peered through the blinds at the pre-dawn darkness. Nothing but shadows. Then my phone pinged with a news alert. The screen glowed white in the dark room, the text a jagged line of black ink. Local man found dead in apparent suicide. I didn't need to read the rest. I already knew the name of the victim. Tommy Wilkins. I returned to the station the next morning, my hands trembling from sobriety rather than withdrawal. Sleep had eluded me, leaving my eyes more bloodshot than before, but clear, perhaps for the first time in months. "Morning, Marge," I said, trying to modulate my voice so it didn't sound like a plea for help. "Derek, 2 days in a row? Someone's gunning for Employee of the Month." She laughed at her own joke while sorting through a stack of mail. Quick question. Has anyone been talking about Channel 47 today? Any unusual programming?" Her smile faltered. "Channel 47? That's been dead for ages. Why?" "Just curious. Thought I saw something last night during my shift." Marge shook her head. "Probably just your imagination. Or ghosts." She wiggled her fingers mockingly. I made my way to the IT department where Ted was hunched over a circuit board. "Hey man, any reports about signal interference on Channel 47 last night?" Ted didn't even look up. "Impossible. That channel's been completely offline. Has been since the budget cuts. There's literally nothing there to interfere with." "What about a hijacked signal?" I asked. And that got his attention. He swiveled in his chair and looked at me. "Like some pirate broadcast in Monroe?" He snorted. "This isn't 1987, Derek. Our system logs every transmission. Nothing's gone out on 47 in months." I left the IT department with more questions than answers. But then I decided to take a drive. The drive out to Tommy Wilkins' apartment complex felt like a funeral procession. Yellow police tape cordoned off the entrance to his building. A small crowd had gathered, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and thinly veiled satisfaction. I approached an elderly woman watching from the sidelines. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm wondering what happened here last night." She appraised me with watery eyes. "You didn't hear? That thief, the one they let walk, finally got what was coming." "Oh, you mean Tommy Wilkins? What exactly happened?" "There was a crowd. Started small, just a few people shouting, but then more came. They were chanting something. Couldn't make it out from my window. They were throwing things at his door, trying to break in through his windows." She leaned closer. "By midnight, there must have been at least 30 people. Police never showed, not until after." "After what?" "After he jumped." Her voice held no sympathy. "4th floor, didn't stand a chance." She then turned around and went back to her geraniums, her movements methodical as if she was watering the grave of a man she'd never met. I walked around the parking lot, a sick feeling building in my gut. I found Tommy's car easily, the only vehicle surrounded by shattered glass. Someone had taken a baseball bat to the windshield, but what caught my eye was the symbol spray-painted on the hood. A crescent moon, stark white against the red metal. Was this the Moon Gang on social media? An hour later, I sat in Starbucks nursing the strongest black coffee I could buy while my laptop booted up. I searched for Crescent Watch Monroe and unpunished broadcast. The results were sparse, a few Reddit threads, some 4chan posts. I clicked on a promising link and started to read, but then my screen went black. A message appeared in bright red text. IP flagged. Access denied. I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing, and glanced around the coffee shop. No one seemed to notice me, but the hair on the back of my neck stood at full attention. I felt exposed. Watched. On my way home, I passed Frank's Liquor. My feet slowed automatically, muscle memory guiding me towards the familiar refuge of bourbon oblivion. Through the window, I could see the bottles gleaming under the fluorescent lights, promising a temporary peace. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, torn between old habits and new purpose. No, I needed clarity tonight. I needed to see what came next. At 3 a.m., I was back at the station, phone camera ready to go. Right on schedule, Channel 47 flickered to life. The robed figure, a man identifying himself as Pax, appeared. The distorted voice filling the empty room. Justice is blind. We are not. Unpunished. This time they featured Pastor Elias Jenkins, the beloved leader of First Baptist Church. The accusations were horrific. Molestation of choir boys, cover-up by the church elders. His address flashed on the screen along with close-up photos of his house and his car. I recorded everything. By the time I made it back to my trailer, emergency vehicles were already screaming past me, heading towards the wealthy part of town where Jenkins lived. Then my phone buzzed with a news alert. Local pastor found hanging from church bell tower. The timestamp showed he'd been dead before I even left the station. The next evening, I parked outside of Stan Guthrie's shop, a six-pack of O'Doul's in hand. The flickering neon sign reading Vintage Electronics buzzed in the dusk light. Stan had been Monroe's go-to guy for analog tech for decades. More importantly, he owed me a favor from when I'd kept his DUI out of the paper 5 years ago. Well, look what the cat dragged in, Stan said as the bell above the door announced my entrance. His eyes narrowed at the sight of me. Thought you fell off the face of the earth, Malin. I placed the non-alcoholic beer on his counter. Peace offering? He snorted but took one anyway, popping the cap with a practiced flick. What's got you crawling out of whatever hole you've been hiding in? Need to know about pirate broadcasts. Someone's hijacking Channel 47 at night. Stan's eyebrows shot up. Channel 47? That's a dead frequency. Not anymore. I explained what I'd seen, leaving out the deaths. Stan's expression shifted from skepticism to fascination as I described the technical details. Sounds like a mobile setup, guerrilla broadcasting, he said. Then he disappeared into his back room and returned with what looked like a modified transistor radio rigged with a loop of copper. They're using an analog override, old school but effective. Digital security's gotten fancy, but analog? People always forget the basics. This here is a directional scanner. It will pick up any unauthorized pulses. When they err again, point this thing around. Signal gets stronger. You're getting closer. How much? Stan waved me off. Consider us even, but Derek. His face grew serious. Be careful. Zealots are a closed circuit. They only care about their own truth and their own tribe. Anyone outside that circle is just collateral damage. I spent the next several hours in the cab of my truck parked outside this TV station. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional hum of a passing semi on the interstate. My skin felt too tight for my body, a side effect of the clarity I'd fought so hard for. I kept checking my watch. 12:45, 1:30, 2:15. Every minute felt like an hour, my hand instinctively reaching for the empty space in the passenger seat where a bottle of Beam used to sit. Then at exactly 2:58 a.m., the directional scanner on my lap hissed to life. It wasn't static. It was a rhythmic, pulsing whine. I didn't wait for the broadcast to hit the monitors inside. I slammed the truck into gear and followed the pulse. I drove like a man possessed, the scanner screaming louder as I pushed the truck towards the outskirts of town. Stoplights were just flashes of red and green that I blurred past, my eyes locked on the jumping needle of Stan's device. The signal was dragging me toward Hill Ridge. The needle finally pegged to the right as I approached an abandoned farm property half a mile off the main drag. I killed my headlights a few blocks away, steering by the pale light of the moon to keep from being spotted. Then the stench hit me. First it was acrid, chemical. Through a gap in the trees, orange light flickered. In a clearing sat the charred skeleton of a van, still smoldering. This wasn't a random act of arson. This was a ritual. I touched the hood. The metal was so hot it blistered my fingertips. I'd missed them by seconds. Inside the van, I could make out what appeared to be broadcast equipment, but it was melted and charred beyond any kind of real recognition. The drive home was a blur of paranoia. Every pair of headlights in my rearview mirror felt like a predator. When I finally pulled up to my trailer, the front door stood ajar, spilling yellow light onto the gravel lot. I knew I should run, but the reporter in me, the part that hadn't been drowned in whiskey, demanded to see the crime scene. Inside, the smell of fresh-cut wood was overwhelming. Carved into my living room wall with surgical precision was a crescent moon, 3 feet across. Beneath it sat a VHS tape with a handwritten label, "Watch Me." Without hesitation, I slid the tape into my ancient VCR. The screen filled with grainy footage of me, entering the station, talking to Marge, visiting Tommy's apartment, then footage from inside my own trailer, shot from angles I couldn't find. Me sleeping, me showering. The final shot was me working on my laptop as I tried to find out who these people were. They were watching me do everything. I whirled around, heart hammering in my ribs, but the trailer was empty. I couldn't stay there. I grabbed the tape and the scanner, bolted for my truck, and drove until I saw the blue and red lights of the police precinct. I didn't go in expecting a hero's welcome. I went in because the police station was the only place left in town with a locked door and security cameras. Dawn was breaking when I finally cornered Officer Jenkins, the brother of the pastor who died last night. He looked up from his desk with undisguised contempt. "Well, if it isn't the town drunk. What fairy tale you spinning today, Malin?" "I need to report a breaking and entering. I have evidence of a surveillance ring targeting Monroe citizens." I pushed the tape across his desk. He didn't even glance at it. "Let me guess, someone's out to get you. Voices in the walls?" As he shifted his clipboard, I spotted it. A small crescent moon sticker in the corner, identical to the one on Tommy's car and the one on my trailer wall. The air left my lungs. "You're one of them," I whispered. "One of who?" His smile never reached his eyes. "Go home, Derek. Sleep it off before I find a reason to put you in a cell." I backed away, clutching the tape to my chest. He didn't stop me. He didn't have to. He knew I had nowhere else to go. I spent the next hour in my car, tethered to my neighbor's Wi-Fi. I clicked on the forum talking about the crescent moon, and there it was. My mugshot from 3 years ago. Below it, a detailed account of my ruined marriage and my journalistic failures. The caption at the bottom turned my blood to ice water. Tuesday, 3 a.m. I went home and waited. At 2:45 in the morning, the ancient springs in my trailer floor creaked as I paced, gripping my father's old .38 revolver. I hadn't fired it in years, hadn't even cleaned it, but its weight felt like the only solid thing in a world turning to quicksand beneath my feet. I set up my phone camera on a makeshift tripod of stacked books, red light blinking in the corner of the screen. If they were coming for me, there'd be evidence, a record of some kind at least. Something more permanent than my whiskey-soaked legacy. "My name is Derek Malin," I spoke directly to the lens. "Former investigative reporter for the Monroe Daily Star. If you're seeing this, I'm probably dead. The people behind Unpunished are..." My phone buzzed, screen illuminating with a text from an unknown number. "Justice is blind. We are not." The bile rose in my throat, then another message. "We see you, Derek. Still trying to write the story? Some lessons are harder to learn than others." I slammed the phone down, heart hammering against my ribs. They'd started early. The psychological siege was beginning before the broadcast even hit the air. At exactly 3 a.m., my TV screen erupted with static, then stabilized into that familiar lo-fi aesthetic. The red-robed figure of Pax appeared, silhouette stark against a backdrop of distorted images. Newspaper clippings, headlines about my career-ending mistake. "Tonight we turn our lens to the enablers of injustice," the synthesized voice announced. "Derek Malin, once trusted to uncover truth, who buried it instead." My own face filled the screen. Not my mugshot from the forums, but me now. Hair thinning, eyes hollow. Filmed through my own window. "A man whose alcoholism led to the freedom of a predator, whose negligence cost a community its safety, whose arrogance cost him everything, but not enough." They had everything. My divorce papers, Private emails to my ex-wife begging for another chance, photos of me passed out behind dumpsters, each piece of evidence meticulously arranged like a prosecutor's exhibit. When those entrusted to protect us become the danger. The camera angle shifted. The back of a head came into frame. My head, in real time. I spun around to face my own living room wall, where the carved crescent moon seemed to glow in the bluish light of the broadcast. I wasn't just watching the broadcast, I was in it. The camera wasn't in my trailer. My trailer was the set. My life was the show. Shadows passed my windows, flashlights sweeping across the thin curtains like searchlights in a prison yard. The rumble of engines filled the night, a convoy arriving for the finale. I grabbed my gun and my phone and I kicked open my back door and bolted into the darkness. Mrs. Gable's trailer stood 30 yards away, lights still on despite the hour. I sprinted across damp grass, pounding on her door with desperate fists. "Mrs. Gable, please, they're coming for me." Her curtain parted. Our eyes met through the glass. I expected fear, confusion. Instead, she stared at me with cold, righteous judgment, the same look I'd seen on the faces in Tommy's neighborhood. "Mrs. Gable, please." She turned away. As she moved, I caught a glimpse of her TV. Channel 47. My life on display, my sins being narrated to a rapt audience. I stumbled backwards. Other faces appeared in other windows throughout the trailer park, all watching, all judging, all in agreement. The whole park was watching the broadcast, and they agreed with it. I had nowhere left to hide. The red broadcast tower light pulsed in the distance, above the tree line. If I couldn't escape them, I'd confront them head on. I sprinted towards the woods, choosing confrontation over slow execution. The light grew brighter as I crashed through underbrush, lungs burning, legs leaden. Finally, the hill ridge clearing opened before me, the scorched circle where I'd found the burned van, now occupied by a new vehicle surrounded by hooded figures. In the center stood Pax, crimson robe billowing in the night breeze. "Stop!" I raised the gun, hands trembling. "Take off the mask, now!" The figure lifted pale hands to the hood and slowly lowered it. It was my editor. My fucking editor from the Monroe Daily Star. The circle of figures removed their hoods one by one. Officer Jenkins, Marge from the TV station, the barista from Starbucks. Faces from my past and present, neighbors, colleagues, strangers from town whose coffee I'd fetched or whose garbage I'd collected. The mob wasn't some fringe group. It was Monroe itself. I looked at Pax. I pulled the trigger, wanting to end all of this. The rusted firing pin produced nothing but a hollow, impotent click. I tried again. Click, click, click. A lifetime of neglect echoing in the silence. My editor shook his head. Neglected. Like your responsibility to this town. The mob surged forward, grabbing my arms. I fought, but there was too many of them. They dragged me towards the van, towards a chair positioned in front of a camera. The same lens that had watched me sleep now waited to broadcast my demise. "Listen to me," I screamed as they bound me to the chair. "This isn't justice. This is a lynch mob with better production values." My editor flipped a switch on the camera. I could see myself on a monitor, my lips moving in a frantic, desperate rhythm, but the audio levels were a flat, dead line. Muted. I was a silent monster for the world to see. "Why not let me speak?" I shouted, though I knew the microphone was a prop. "Afraid of what I might say?" "It's not what you say, Derek," my editor replied, adjusting the frame with the same clinical focus he used to give my front page leads. "It's what you did, or rather, what you failed to do." The last thing I saw before the bag went over my head was the monitor. It wasn't a live feed anymore. It was the finished product. A loop of my own terrified, silent face transitioning to the image of my empty trailer. The carved crescent moon on the front door was the final shot, and below it the caption that would define my legacy. Unpunished until now.